Welcome to the Weaver Podcast. I'm Sonja Wood, a mediator, conflict management expert, neuroscience enthusiast, and positive psychology practitioner. This podcast is for the leaders, the decision makers who already know that relationships shape everything: your success, your impact, your well-being. Here, we go beyond surface level advice to explore the deep shift that create real change in how you navigate conflict, communication, and connection. So if you're ready to refine the way you lead, you relate and influence, you're in the right place. As I said, I'm really impassioned and excited to hear more of your story. I know a little bit here and there, but not the whole story. And because of the job I do, I'm always interested to hear stories where people have been in a relationship that was not healthy, was maybe toxic, was damaging, and how they succeeded and how you did it. Because today you're a yoga teacher, you big yin yoga fan. So tell me more about you, Kimberly.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me here today. Wow. Uh, so I was in a marriage to a man that when I met him, it's now, let me see, 25, like 35, 34 years ago was when we met. And I honestly thought he was the one, like the soulmate. In my eyes, he was perfect. Everybody looked up to him. He gave so much of himself to everybody. And I saw that as a gift back then. I didn't realize he was compensating. He was looking for external validation to feel worthy for himself. Um, but I fell in love with him. But there was a small part of me that just knew that it was possible that he wasn't who he portrayed to be. But I decided to trust. And so we got married. And 2 weeks after we were married, he had a complete breakdown and ended up in the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Hospital here in Ottawa. And he was in the alcohol rehabilitation program.
Mhm.
And that's when I found out he had an addiction to alcohol. I had no idea. I mean, we worked in the restaurant industry at the time, and the standard protocol after working was we all would just go out and have a drink. And this was the normal thing. Everybody went out and drank. But back then he was considered what his psychiatrist coined him as a functioning alcoholic. So he could still do everything that anybody else could do without having to fall apart. He just needed to have something to drink, and it had to be every single day. So, he would have a drink every single day, and I didn't question it because we were just in that industry where it was like, yeah, okay, well, like sit down after work and let's have a glass of wine or let's have a beer or something like that and let's chat. I didn't realize back then that he had the addiction. It was, he would hide it from me. He would have a drink with me, but then after I would go to bed, I didn't realize this till much later on, but he would have several drinks, even though I
Mhm.
didn't know. So he was hiding it from me until the point where he just literally collapsed and ended up in the hospital. And that's when I found out from the psychiatrist that, I said, what's wrong with him? And the psychiatrist says, you don't know. And I said, no. And he's like, well, your husband is an alcoholic. And I'm like, I don't think he's not an alcoholic. Like I said, I know what an alcoholic is like. I said, my father was an alcoholic. And he's like,
Hmm.
no, your husband is an alcoholic. And I didn't know back then that we become energetic matches for,
Who
people.
we
And
are.
he was an energetic match to my father because he was a carbon copy of my father. And I didn't know that back then. So I was in complete denial. And I said, okay, well then what happens now? And the doctor said, well, he'll go through a rehabilitation program and then hopefully he'll be okay. And I'm like, all right, well, that sounds, again, I'm in denial. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds great. We have a plan. So he went through rehab, 6 weeks, came out, and for 7.5 years, never had a single drink. Even though he was an owner of a restaurant at the time and he was surrounded by alcohol all the time, we went on trips across the world where there was alcohol being served everywhere. Nothing, not a single drop, not a single temptation. And I thought, oh my God, thank you so much, God. Like, oh, all right, we're okay. And then one day out of the blue, and he couldn't explain it, he just, he snapped and he thought, okay, well, I could have one drink and I'll be okay. And that one drink just completely destroyed him. And he went on a path where it just got worse and worse and worse. He went in and out of rehab he went through rehab 6 times. And eventually he couldn't cope. He would come back home and he would still relapse and back and forth in Alcoholics Anonymous, had support and everything. And in his last round of rehab, he ended up meeting a cocaine addict who he bonded with very well. And he had an affair with her. And I found out from an email from someone else who was in rehabilitation with my husband, who found me on the internet because at that time I was teaching yin yoga. My name was all over I was doing reflexology. Like I was known, so it wasn't that difficult to find out where you could find me. And in rehab, they were very open about talking about everything. So everyone knew he was married, even though he was also having an affair with somebody else. And everyone seemed to think that that was acceptable, except this one person who decided to contact me. And when I found out and I read the email, I thought, okay, this is a hoax. Like somebody's just either playing some kind of prank on me or this is some spam email. And I wanted to delete it. But then at the end of the email, the gentleman that wrote it to me said, please contact Dr. Smithson and he'll confirm. And I thought, how would he know who that doctor is that's in that program? So part of me wanted to deny it, but the other part of me was like, no, like I have to find out. And so I confronted the doctor and he did not deny it. And his response to me was, I want you to know that although this is not ideal, were his words, this often happens in rehab and there's nothing that we can really do about it. And he left me with that. So when my husband did come home, I had finally said, you know what? I'm like, I'm out. Like I cannot go on this roller coaster ride with you anymore. The constant, in and out of rehab. I'm sober, I'm not sober. I'm bipolar, I'm not bipolar. I'm not on meds, I am on meds. Like I just, I'm going to work, but I can't work now. Like I just couldn't handle it anymore. And it was actually my yin yoga practice. I've said this many times to many people that yin yoga literally saved my life. Like throughout the whole marriage, when everything was up and down and up and down, I would go to my practice as my salvation. Like that was I called it an escape back then, not realizing that it wasn't an escape. It was a place for me to come back home to myself. But I didn't see it back then as that. I saw it as I just can't cope. I can't deal with this. I need to go over here and do my practice. But it was actually a way for me to create awareness of how I was feeling and how to deal with those emotions. And that's when I discovered the whole more alternative traditional Chinese medicine approach to yin yoga, where it was all that we store emotions in our organs and that if we don't release them, it creates disease and dis-ease. and that how we can use the practice to actually safely process and release our emotions. And I was like, this is literally saving my life. And it's what gave me the courage to leave after 25 years. And when I left, I had no plan. I wasn't teaching at the time, I was only teaching like one class a week. And I had a reflexology business that was pretty fresh. So I didn't really have a stable patient base. So I didn't have a stable income at all. And I knew I couldn't rely on him financially because he was actually relying on his parents financially because he wasn't even able to work. So I knew that, until we were divorced and the house was sold, like financially, I had no clue. So I had to go to my mother and tell her everything. And she used to think my husband was God because she only saw one side of him. And I never told her about his addiction. I hid it.
Mhm.
And I had to go to her and I had to sit her down and say, I have got something to tell you that I don't know how I'm going to tell you this. And I don't know
So
how I'm going to deal with it.
before we go into the conversation with the mother, I'm very curious to know a few things about if we go back in time. You briefly addressed actually that he was matching your father's energy. And I'm curious to know if the relationship you had with your father has impacted what you were looking in men's as a young woman.
I think so, yes. I mean, I didn't have the greatest relationship with my father at all. He was very distant. He was raised in a family where his parents had children because that was what you were supposed to do, but they sent him off to boarding schools most of his life. So he didn't know he wasn't raised with love and compassion and someone being supportive. So it was difficult for him to try to do the same thing. So I was very close to my mom, but with my dad, I mean, I didn't know he had a problem, an addiction with alcohol. I mean, I was so young at the time that I would just see him drink and I would just think, oh, okay, well, that's what you do. But the more I got into my relationship with my husband, the more I started to see just how similar he was in terms of no self-worth, no assurance of like no confidence at all,
Mhm.
um, having to depend on something else to fill up your cup. And when my husband got into an argument with my father one time, I was standing there and I was listening to the two of them, and I thought I was actually only listening to one person. They were both saying the exact same thing, except they were coming out of two mouths. And that's when I realized, oh my God, like I just married my husband or my father. Like my husband is my father.
It's interesting that you're saying that um, this I have this image of two people actually mirroring each other in their words and actions and behaviors. Very fascinating. Do you
Yeah,
think
and my
was
husband
the,
is actually 15 years older than I am.
all right?
Yeah, and my
No, it's not
father,
because it's
no,
not
no,
because
no,
you have an
no,
older partner that you're suddenly thinking,
no.
"Oh, I married my father, I married my mother." Not at all. But it's very interesting to still reflect on that and detach from. It's, I believe, it has a lot to do with transactional analysis, where how you behave in a relationship, if you tends to be the child looking for the paternal figure or not. That's
Hmm.
a way to say it. But do you think it was a red flag for you this time where you saw them both arguing with each other, or what was a red flag, or if there was many?
There were so many red flags.
Okay.
There were so many red flags, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of the red flags I chose to be in denial of them, even though they were literally in front of me. I was being told. I was like, I know this is not where I should be. Even my intuition was like, you need to get out of this relationship like sooner. There was so much fear that overrode everything, all the red flags, that I believed in the fear of I can't be by myself. I can't support myself. I'll never find somebody else. I can't do this alone. That I was like, okay, well, yeah, he's just like my dad. All right, okay, that's not a good thing, but you know what? I'll accept it. Like I just accepted everything. I just decided to accept. Like I
You would
gave up.
say you would say more like you tolerated something, but
Hmm.
I think it's a real distinction to make, to accept versus to tolerate. I feel many times when we fear losing something, we tolerate a situation, even if we rather not accept it, but we make the sacrifice to tolerate something.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, maybe accept was not the right word. Tolerate, yeah. Yeah, I definitely tolerated a lot of abuse in many different forms that out of fear. It
So
was all out of fear.
how did the yoga practice, because you're not the first one interviewed that talk about yoga, and how did yoga practice helped you from the time you realized it can go further along like that to the time you're going to your mother and tell her everything and have a conversation?
So when I realized that my yin practice was more than just an escape, it was more than just getting on my mat and stretching out my body or relaxing my mind. When I realized that there was power in the way that I was feeling, the anger, especially the anger, there was so much anger that I had, so much anger, frustration, irritation, resentment. There was rage. I'm not an angry person at all, but there was so much of that that when I realized I was not letting it come out because, most of us were taught that, especially with anger, it's not an emotion that you express.
Mm-hmm.
Like you shove it under the carpet. You don't express that. Or if you do, it's like, you go somewhere quiet where no one else is around and you scream into a pillow or something like that to let it out. But I was taught not even to do that because my father often would tell me, like when I was a small child, like I would play with my dolls and he would be like, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "I'm playing with my dolls." And he'd like, "No, be quiet. Like you don't do that. Like shut up. Like you don't talk, you don't speak, you don't show stuff." So when it came time to all this anger and I could feel it in my body, but I people could literally see it on my face. My face was beet red all the time. And people would say, "Do you have rosacea or do you have something wrong with your skin?" And I'd be like, "No." And I didn't realize it was anger that was showing up on my skin, in my body. And when I found out that I could use the practice of yin to safely process that, like I didn't feel like I had to go somewhere like on the top of a mountain and scream my lungs out or scream into a pillow or beat a pillow up. I just was like, I'm just going to go and do yin and I'm going to work on the yin yoga poses that stimulate the liver. And I'm going to use that practice to help me process and release this until I feel safe, until I feel calm. And that's what I just kept doing. That was my way of processing my emotions. I mean, everybody has their way, but for me, it just felt, I don't know, from the very first time I got on into a yin practice, I knew there was something that was happening that was far beyond a physical stretch. And I didn't know what it was, but I just trusted that it was meant for me. And now I know why it was meant for me. It literally
Yes,
saved my life.
but it's
I
interesting
never,
because I would think that if you have strong emotions like anger, you would go toward power yoga or hatha yoga or hot yoga, something that gets you sweat and gets your heart rate a little higher and just get the energy out somehow. So I'm very interested that you use the yin yoga, which is the softest yoga you can find to soothe the anger. So I wonder, just at some point you need to let it out, not to just calm it down.
Yes. So there would be some times where I was in my practice and I could feel the heat brewing. Not the physical heat, like I could feel the heat from the anger
Mhm.
brewing. And I'd be like,
Yes.
just breathe, just breathe. And I remember one time, hopefully it's okay, I'm going to drop an F-bomb here in a minute. Um, I was in dragon pose, which is a low lunge position. And I'm going to say for probably 99% of the people, it's an extremely uncomfortable position. It's deep into your hips. It's uncomfortable. It can be painful for some people, but I was there and I was in dragon pose and I'm breathing out through my mouth because I was like, oh my God, like there's so much fire, right? Like literally like a dragon fire. And I'm just staring at the wall in front of me. And I was like, I had a yoga block in one hand and I threw the block at the wall and I said, fuck it. I'm like, I fucking had it with this shit. Like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm so done. Like, I'm so done. And then I took up the other block and I threw the other block at the wall. And I actually dented the wall in two different spots. And then I went and picked up another block because I have a lot of blocks. And I threw another block and then I threw another block. And I was like, I'm done. I'm just done. Like, I'm so fucking done with this. Like, that's it. And then, just like we are right now, I started laughing. It's like, oh, I just dented the wall like 5 times. Oh well, just a wall. I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to like, fix the wall. I'm gonna have to patch it. I'm gonna have to paint. Oh well. And then I was like, oh, I'm like, I feel so much better. But I rarely had experiences where it came out that way, that sort of, I'm not going to say aggressively, but the anger came out that way. Um, I'm very A-type personality, so I'm very go driven. And I think part of why yin gravitated to me so much was because even though I did Ashtanga for years, oh my God, like that's what I started with was Ashtanga and Bikram yoga. And um, in the heat and in the repetition of the poses and, trying to bind my body into different shapes that my body was probably not meant to do. And I just kept thinking as I was doing all those practices, I was like, I feel like there's some practice that I'm missing. Like this is all helping me to feel better and I'm calm and I'm all zen and chill AF. But I was like, there's I need something else. And that's when I landed in yin. And then that's when I knew right away, I was like, this is what I was meant for. So when I need to release something, whether it's grief or sadness, fear, anger, yin is what does it for me. It's the calmness and the tranquility.
I love it. I love it. And I try to integrate more of yin in my practice, which is usually my stretching time. Um, why do you think it seems you got that drive to, as you said, you're done with it. You get that drive and you get that intelligence to look at resources outside, so your own side of the family. Um, why do you think for some other women it's difficult, or that may touch some men's too? I mean, why do you think some are not getting out of the situation where they don't feel capable to unstuck themselves from the situation?
Honestly, I think it's lack of emotional intelligence, lack of emotional
Okay.
awareness. It's
What do
not
you mean by
even
that?
so. I mean, I will say years ago, like I am not even remotely the same person as I was when I was in that marriage. I had no awareness of my emotions and how they were impacting me physically, mentally, energetically, emotionally. Like I was just, I'd be like, I would barely even notice that I was angry. Or if I was angry, I wouldn't explore why. Like uh, I just never explored. Like I just didn't even think to explore. I just would think, okay, well, you know what? Like people get angry. Okay, well, I get angry. Like I never got contemplative. Like I never would sit down and just ask myself, like, how do I feel? Like
Mm.
I never would ask myself that question. So how do I feel? Like as if I was sitting in front of a psychiatrist. And it's interesting because when my husband was in rehab the last round, the psychiatrist said to me, have you not spoken to anyone? And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, do you not have a therapist, like either a psychiatrist or a psychologist or someone that you can speak to about all of this that you're going through? There are so many resources available for you. And I was like, no. And he's like, never? And I said, no. And he's like, why? He goes, I'm not judging, but he's like, why not? And I said, I don't need it. And he's like, what do you mean you don't need it? And I was like, I don't need it. And he's like, well, I think you're in a little bit of, he's like, respectfully, I think you're in a little bit of denial of how you're feeling, of your own emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just looked at him and I sat there almost like a deer frozen in the headlights. And I finally said, oh my God, yeah, I've been so consumed with how is he feeling that I never
Yeah.
stopped to ask, how am I feeling? I didn't think that that was something that you did. It was like, okay, I'm in the marriage. He's struggling, you know, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. He was in sickness. It was the worst. It wasn't time for me to focus on me. I wasn't taught
Yeah.
that. So I didn't know any different. That's why I say lack of emotional awareness.
That's why I love the statement that we learn in class, for me, for you, for us. I love it so much because no matter what, for me first, then for you, and then for us. And what is good for me is good for you and is good for us. And it's not reverse. It's not what is good for you is good for me and for us. It's for me, for you, for us.
But you see, I was also raised in a family where, I mean, my parents did were incredible people. I mean, they did the best that they could with the tools that they had, just like any parents do. But my mom was very much raised, I mean, she was the oldest child and we had, you know, she had two other brothers. One of them was an epileptic from birth, and the other one, he just had he was very introverted. And so being around a lot of people, it was very difficult for him. And my grandfather was in the war. So when he came back, he had PTSD, but back then they didn't know what PTSD was. So he
Yeah.
was not functional. And so my grandmother was kind of like trying to support everybody, but she couldn't do it. So it all fell on my mom. So my mom put herself aside and took care of everybody else. And so I learned that. I learned to, well, you know what? You support everybody else, not yourself. And it's something I
Interesting.
still struggle with today is that I'm by myself now. And it's like, well, who's supporting me? Me.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, that's kind of scary because what's that really like? Now I know after all the work I've been doing that, well, it's the universe that supports me.
Yeah. And you
That's
build
all.
confidence, rely. I think you learn to build confidence and you learn to trust yourself to be self-reliable and independent. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did the healing process started? So you said at some point you went to talk with your mother. Is that the beginning of the healing process?
I would say that was probably, yeah, a huge part of it. I mean, having to go to my mom and tell her that my marriage was falling apart, that my husband was in rehab, was having an affair with a cocaine addict, and that I needed to move out, and I was being physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually abused. And at one point, my husband tried to end my life. And so I was like, I told her, I said, I have to get out. And I said, I need to find somewhere to live, like fast. And I don't have the money to do that. Like, I don't have the money to pay for first and last month's rent somewhere. Like, I need help. And so not only was it a shock to tell her everything that, about the marriage, but then on top of that, for me anyways, this was my interpretation. For me, it was also, now I have to ask you for a lot of money, like thousands of dollars to help me, because there was no way, and I couldn't stay in that house. I assure you, I don't think I'd be alive today if I had stayed. So my
Mm.
mom just turned to me and said, okay, let's get you out. That was it. Let's get you out. There was no drama. There was no, oh my God. It was just, let's get you out. Now, I don't know if she was reacting from a place of shock. I think absolutely, for sure. Maybe even a place of denial. But she was like, how much money do you need? I'm getting my checkbook out. Let's go. And so I told her, I said, well, I've found a place. This is what it's going to cost for first and last month's rent. I'm going to contact a real estate agent. I'm going to put the house up for sale. I don't know how long it's going to take. So that means I don't know. And she's like, you're going to need more money than that. Just not just first and last month's rent. She's like, you're moving out on your own. You're going to need more. So she said, let's give you this amount to start with, and then let's get you in this place and out of that house. And my mom was famous for always saying, let's just take it one day at a time. And I was like,
Mm. Very wise.
okay, one day at a time. And to this day, my mom still says, one day at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah, very
Especially
wise.
when I freak out, she's always like, just one day at a time, one day at a time, Kim. It's just one day at a time.
If you're if you're willing to talk more,
Mhm.
if not, then it's also okay. I'm curious to know, there is, in family mediation, when we have domestic violence, there is always this window that is said to be the most dangerous for the woman, when she decides to leave the home to seek out support and help. And US side, there is many organizations that provide that kind of help. But this is a window that is very critical and needs to be handled properly. And I'm curious to know, how did you handle the transition from leaving the house to get on your own, if you found that danger in the home?
Absolutely. What was interesting was that when I went to sign the lease papers for my condo, I was sitting there in the room and I was looking at the papers and I was literally trying not to shake because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to show the leasing agent how terrified I was. And then I signed the lease and I left there and I went and got in my car and I thought, this was scarier than the day my husband tried to strangle me. And I thought, I was like, how fucked up is that? Like, I'm more afraid to sign a lease, to leave a marriage where someone tried to kill me. That's fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, very.
That's the standard. What I've learned is a standard procedure, though. Like procedure, standard process of getting out of domestic violence. You're more scared to leave than to stay. I think that the fact that it's unpredictable has a lot to do with it. Because if you stay,
Absolutely.
you know what's gonna happen, so it's predictable. But if
Yeah.
you get out, what's gonna happen? And did you get support for this?
Um, you know what? You know where I got support from? I got support from my mom. My mom was there for me. But where most of my support came from was my yin yoga practice.
Mhm.
because I didn't want to. My mom was already providing for me financially. And in the first few months that I moved here, I couldn't really work that much. I mean, the building that I was living in was still under construction. That's how new it was. So it was really difficult for me to bring patients in and try and do a reflexology treatment when it's supposed to be a calm and inviting and tranquil space
Yeah.
when there's banging happening everywhere. So I could barely work. Also, just emotionally, it was just like, I was like, oh my God, I just left something of 25 years of my life, like first time ever living on my own. Like first time in my life living on my own. I'm like, I didn't even know how to cook back then because my husband was a chef. So he did all the cooking. So I was like, I moved here and I was like, I remember the day that I moved in, some friends of mine helped me move. And one of my friends, she brought me all this food and she's like, okay, like here's all this food. And I'm like, what do I do with that? And she's like, you cook? And I'm like, what do you mean I cook? And she's like, you cook it. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I I don't know how to cook. She said, what do you mean you don't know how to cook? I said, well, I said when I was in high school and we had to take home economics, where you learned how to sew and cook and knit.
Mhm.
I didn't want that. So I took industrial arts, which was shop. I went into the woodworking and did carpentry. I was like, I don't want to learn how to cook and sew. Like, blow, that stuff blows. I'm not interested in that. And so it was like, I literally was like, okay, I have to figure this out because I can't obviously eat out of takeout all the time. So I have to learn how to cook. So I had to learn how to cook. And now I laugh at myself back then, the little chicken nugget version of me in the kitchen, because let me tell you, I'm a bit of a chef now. Like I can cook the most incredible food and I'm proud that I can. So,
Yeah.
there was that transition of like, yeah, and then just learning how to do stuff on my own. Like, oh, I want to paint a wall. I don't know how to do that. Okay, well, I'm going to learn. And I painted this beautiful orange wall. I mean, I learned one day at a time, just how to do
Doing
stuff. And
for you.
if I was really stuck, I did reach out to people that I knew. But in terms of like psychological or, support, like I did it on my own. I did it in my
And
yin practice.
what did you on the more emotional aspect of healing? Because things like that, you're talking about 25 years relationship that was not healthy for you. Like at some point that needs to be healed. See if you want to move forward, I would guess.
Hmm.
But that's a lot. That's heavy emotionally. That's I don't know if you've read the book The Body Keeps the Score,
Yes, I
but
have.
that's a lot that the body also get in memory and that you need to transcend and to move forward. So what I'm suspect you're gonna say yin yoga, but what helped you to emotionally be ready today to move forward? Because you're looking and you sound joyful. I see on your social media as well. You like dancing. You're a very lively person, and I guess it didn't happen overnight.
No, not at all. In fact, if some of my social media, I mean, I've deleted a lot of it from the past, but there was a stage where I went through where when I would look at what I would post, I could clearly see it was coming from anger. Like there was
Mm.
so much rage and so much anger, and I was expressing it out through my posts. I was never expressing it out through, like when I was teaching yin, I would never express it out that way. Like I was never, angry with my students or, screaming at them or anything like that. But it was interesting because I was very opinionated. And when I would work with my reflexology patients, like I could see stuff in them that I'm like, you just, you know what? Like I respect you, but you need to heal this crap. Like, and I was very blunt and very direct with people, almost to the point where it literally probably, now that I think about it, came off as anger, right? And I just finally one day I woke up and I realized that I don't, I said to myself, I don't think that this is how life is supposed to be lived. Like I think I'm missing something here. Like there's something I'm missing. And what I was missing was the connection to me. And I just realized I don't want to live so disconnected anymore. Like I deserve better. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know what that road's going to look like, but I am stubborn as hell. I'm very strong-willed. I definitely take after my father in that way. When I want something, I just go after it. And that's just it. I just go after it. So that's what I decided to do. I was like, you know what? I've already spent, I didn't say I wasted my life because I don't think of it that way. If I had to live it over again, in all honesty, I probably would have still chosen it because I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through those experiences. So I don't have any regrets. But I also know that moving forward with my life, I get to choose how I want to feel and I get to choose what I create because I'm the only one that's going to do it.
Yeah. Are you happy today?
I am happy today. I mean, do I have everything that I desire? No. There's lots of things that I don't have, but in those moments where I think I wish I had more or I wish things were different, I honestly think back and I say to myself, oh my God, like I'm okay. I actually live in peace. Like there's no drama here, other than maybe my cat if she decides to have a hissy fit on me. But the only drama that ever happens is the one that I create in my own mind, which I have control over. So every time I open up the door to my condo, I know what to expect when I walk in here. It's
Yeah.
peaceful, it's tranquil. In fact, when my patients come in here, often the first thing that they'll say is, "Oh my God, it's so peaceful here." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, because that's how I choose to live." So whenever I feel like I don't have what I desire, I pull in the gratitude of I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm living peacefully.
And you get to desire more.
And
I
I
love
get to
that.
desire more. I get to desire more.
Yeah, I love that. Something I heard a while ago that a person had lost her grandmother, and when the grandmother passed away, there is a list of things she wanted to accomplish, places she wanted to visit, things she wanted to do. And you have two ways to look at it. You can think, oh, she left too soon, she didn't have time to do all those things, or she still desired to do so much. And the outcome of this, the lesson, I would say, the life lesson was to see it as a beautiful thing that you get to desire more and more every day. And hopefully, the day you die, you also have a long list you haven't done yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are the creators of our life, of our reality. And
Yeah,
I'm certainly learning in the last few months just what is possible. Like anything is possible. I mean, my
yeah.
father used to tell me, You can do anything you want, kiddo, anything you want."
Before
And
we end the conversation, there is one question I have for you.
mhm,
What is one of a few of the biggest mindset shift that you've experienced that helped you to reclaim your power?
knowing that I'm the one that created my past, I'm the one that created everything. So knowing that whatever I created in the past was based on how I thought and how I felt and what I believed in made me realize that what I choose to believe in is what I get to create. And for me, that is so powerful to know that I don't have to wait for somebody else. I get to choose what I believe in, and I also think it is such a beautiful gift to understand the human mind, the ego, and how it operates. For me, that's massive, knowing, that we're all programmed with the same computer chip. It's
Yeah.
just what are we choosing to do with it, right? Some people are choosing to update it and some people are choosing not to. But just it's awareness. Like I say this to my students all the time, like awareness is the biggest gift you're ever going to have. Because
Yeah.
without it, it's like there's no light bulb on over your head. It's off. The minute you turn it on, it's like then there's the contemplation. What a beautiful gift that is. And
Mm.
that you get to give yourself over and over again. You don't have to get that from somebody else.
I love awareness for me is the cornerstone of everything. And I started to realize now, the more I do the work, the more layers of awareness there is. And when I thought I already master a good level of awareness, actually, it's even deeper than that.
Yeah. Just when you
Yeah.
think you've uncovered it all, there's another layer. And you're like, what? I thought I got it all. No, there's another piece. And there's always going to be another piece, right? Like this is the evolution. This is what we're here for. One foot in evolution, one foot in healing. It's constantly one foot in front of the other if we choose that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation. A lot of vulnerability shared, so I appreciate very much. If there is
My
anywhere
pleasure.
I can redirect people to, where? Your social media?
Yeah, yeah. Soulful Yin Yoga, all one word, SOLEFULYINYOGA. Yeah, my Soulful
Yeah,
Yin. You'll find me there. All
I'll
the
put
things are
all the
there.
links. Yes, I'll put all the links in the description of the podcast so
Okay.
people will find it. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you so much. I'm so blessed to have been here today with you. What a beautiful conversation.